Okay, hello everyone. Today like to share some thoughts with everyone on this quite interesting topics, the post-pandemic era and what's going to be look like for healthcare innovation. So as we all know that we're facing one of the worst pandemics right now globally. So COVID-19 impacted almost every aspect for our lives, as some of us have experienced in the past, and some of us are still fighting for getting this virus controlled. So this virus, to my knowledge, is quite smart and quite strange. Unlike other viruses, this COVID-19 infects many of organs and functions of the human body. And unlike other viruses, COVID-19 can be transmitted in a variety of ways, and including through as symptomatic. Let me just move this a little bit. Okay, as symptomatic carriers and mysterious environment conditions. As we know, probably most of the origin of the virus are from quite harsh, different environments. And also, we expected that COVID-19 could disappear in the summer, just like SARS disappeared magically in May or June timeframe, but it didn't happen. So now we start to learn more and realize COVID-19 may coexist with human being in the next next few years, in the foreseeable future, until we develop some either magic cure or develop the vaccines. So far, although many countries and research firms have started to develop either the drugs, vaccines, or antibodies, so far we still don't have a silver bullet, no miracle drugs, no approved vaccines, although some of them are quite close to the market, which are the good news. So right now, our human immunity system is still the best defense. So that's the big challenges in front of all of us. Then in terms of healthcare industry, the situations also quite interesting, different. Some businesses had growth, especially business related to protection gears and masks and ventilators and some others. But most of the businesses, even as the hospitals, are facing challenges in negative ways. And we have had a tremendous impact in the whole world by COVID-19. Many countries are still facing economic contraction. China somehow has managed to contain the virus transmission, and thanks to the hard work from everybody, from the people and from the government. And the China has started a quite rapid economic recovery. We have seen the recovery on the supply side is quite fast. Probably back to June or July, as some areas had the full recovery in terms of supply, but the consumption side is a little bit slower. So business may face contractions in both domestic consumption and exporting. That's the situation in China. That's what we need to think about, how to grow the healthcare business. The healthcare industry faces challenges, as I mentioned, in both consumption and exports. And there's also coupled with the trend of technological decollaboration and the business decoupling. So as we have learned a lot about especially the how important it is to doing the innovation to have collaborations, but there's truly a trend of decollaboration globally and the business decoupling. And we have also seen globally the supply chain challenges due to various of reasons. So my thought is, in order to overcome the difficulties, the continuous innovation is the only way for the healthcare industry to survive and to prosper. So let's talk a little bit about what most of us are doing now. Some of us are in the area of research, some of us are in the area of innovation, and some of us probably are doing both. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between research and innovation. As we know, scientific research is the process of finding out new things. So we have a scientific hypothesis, and then we develop some experiments and some testing and prove whether the hypothesis is true or false. And doing that, we have been able to develop scientific concepts. So those are the research. The outcomes of the research, scientific research, are embodied in the publications, peer-reviewed papers, and the conferences, and also patents. What the driving force behind the scientific research either by professors and by industries is really come from our curiosity and passion of understanding new things. But there's a difference between research and innovation. Scientific innovation, as my understanding is different from research. It is a transformation of the research results into values, into new products and new services that can solve the problem for the society and create a value for the customer and the society. So because of that, the outcomes are reflected in products, in process, services, regulations, marketing methods, or business models, etc. So the driving force behind innovation is from a different aspect. It's from the innovator's passion and also their courage to change the world, as well as financial benefits. So when we have new product, new processes developed, new methods developed, we always been able to gain some financial benefit, and through either from selling the new products or putting the new company on the market. So those financial benefit to customers and to innovators, those are the driving force for innovation. So when we talk about the healthcare innovation, the key here is to couple research and innovation. So those coupling of research innovation, it drives the scientific-based growth. As we just mentioned, basic research is key for giving us a steady stream of the new ideas, fresh ideas. As we all know, every day, the university professors, what we're chasing are the new, fresh ideas. If those ideas are effectively transferred to industry sector, this can become innovation. So this can become the value to a broad base of customers and to society. As for this reason, the basic research, as most of us are do in university, is essential, but those are not enough. Then innovation can become commercial product-driven growth with the right policy support. So although we want to bring basic research into industry sector and start innovation, develop new product services, but the right policy support is quite important. This is what I'm going to talk a little bit about, how in global perspectives, how we should have the policy support and how we do that from China perspective. So as to that point, developing incentives to spur innovation ideas for new product, new processes is the central challenge for, I call it, innovation ecosystem. So not only just for the like one university or one city is most of the times the innovation ecosystem impacts the economy of the whole country. So with that said, the research, innovation, and the manufacturing, they work closely together. So scientific research is really the only source of scientific innovation, as I mentioned. If those research results are not transferred or transformed into value-added products and services, so the society will not be able to get this tangible value. So as some people said, as we put money, the tax dollars into research, those research will help the society by creating new products or have the feedback of the value back to the society by creating new products. And without innovation, the manufacturing is not sustainable. As we all learned, especially for pharmaceutical industry, when the patent expires, we also call it a patent, the patent cliff. So that means is when a patent of the drug expires, the value of that product stream or even the value of the company will drop significantly. So without a continuous innovation, the manufacturing will not sustainable. And if you only have just some very old products, and the company will probably end up with reduced sales and no profit. So that means research, innovation, manufacturing are mutually supportive and need to be well balanced. So let's talk a little bit about the situation in China. China's R&D funding has increased significantly in the last 20-some years. So now in 2019, it had a funding of 1,760 billion RMB. So it's like a second in the world, which accounts for about 20% of the global funding. The R&D funding strength, which is R&D divided by GDP, is about 2%. It's similar to what we have seen in Europe, a little bit above the average level. The publication side, for the last 8 consecutive years, China has become the second largest contributor for high quality paper. It's just a little bit behind the United States. The number of citations rose to second as well, and the number of most frequently cited papers has now become the third highest in the world. And from some publications and some universities applied patents as well. As we see, patent applications and authorizations rank first in the world, and the number of valid patents are about 1 million. We also have developed a lot of talents in the last many years. The total number of R&D personnel reached about 3.9 million years, ranked the first in the world. And we have the highest number of science and engineering graduates. When you look from different aspects, the global map of innovation, China has had significant growth in terms of innovation index. From the 2013, the 20 grew to 17 in 2017. And from the competitiveness index, it also had a significant increase. But however, if you compare to the research side, the publications and the patents, which are probably ranked the number 2 and number 3 globally, the innovation index from this estimation is about a second tier in the world. So this is quite an important message for the Chinese universities, firms, and also Chinese government. So that on the China side, we have spent a lot of effort to improve the effectiveness of innovation, and also to increase the innovation index. So this is what I'm going to talk about in the next 30, 40 minutes. So before I get into how we do that, let's talk a little bit about some myths around innovation and the reality. So in innovation and new products, there are always three myths. One is we call the linear innovation. Second is we call the perfect market myth. Third one is the myth of the venture capital solution. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talk about those three myths with all of us. So first is the nonlinear model of innovation. Many people, when we don't have the hands-on experience, always think innovation is a linear process. So we start with the research from either from a university or research institute, and we got an idea, we got a patent, we got a paper, and then we move to we call it applied research. And with the probably technology colleges and some other firms, the companies, so the applied research will come up with the prototypes, and then we move into development. And from the development of the prototypes, we got some new products. We commercialize new products, or give to the marketing department. So this looks, the linear model looks like, between each principle, there's a wall. So we finish research, we throw over the wall and send it into the applied research. And after we finish that, throw over the wall to development, and then to commercialization. The reality is innovation is always a complex, nonlinear process. So how to get the effective innovation, have to rely on the constant interaction of these four principles, four disciplines. So when we start a basic research, this will get a feedback on the, what are the basic research for discovery and new ideas, solutions, solve short-term, long-term problems. So when we get this research from our curiosity, we get some results. And then we thought, hey, some of those research ideas might be have some commercial value. So we'll start with the applied research. And applied research needs to design new product, the characteristics, trying to understand the value of the product, how this will impact the society. Most of times, when you do this, you find that what the idea is probably not enough. We need to go back to basic research. So you should have multiple loops until you get to the point that you really have something, which is research ideas or results can really have real applications. So those is multiple loops until you get to the point and say we can move to the next stage. So develop a prototype and start development. So when we go from applied research to product development, development prototype and test the prototypes, and we'll start the application of those research ideas, results to a specific subjects. We started doing this, you got a feedback from market, from cost, from your counterparts, and from very different process, different places. So it's not, you are not going to get those feedback from universities. Mostly you get from hospitals, from nurses, from doctors, from patients. So when we do this, you find out, wow, what we have get out from applied research is not enough for us to really have a effective prototype or be able to move into commercialization. So you have another loop, multiple loops, until you get to the point I say, hey, I got something, I can start to think about a commercialization. We can start making from ones to hundreds, thousands, and tens of thousands, and start to build a manufacturing line, start to apply for regulatory approval. So therefore, you get from development and the commercialization, you have another many loops as well. From these loops, not only you get from the basic research ideas, moving into commercialization, but also quite often you can find a new and unanticipated applications. Those are the source of innovation as well. So this is the nonlinear model of innovation. Most of us will probably like to see the linear model is easy to understand, and we kind of some of us in the universities probably tend to very has the has the desire to work on a basic research, and probably has less, not enough understanding of the later part. Vice versa, the industries probably has more understanding of the development side, commercialization side has no understanding of basic research. But a true innovation comes from the interaction of those four principles: research, basic research, applied research, development, and commercialization. So this is one of the myths. The second myth is so-called a myth of a perfect market. So you can also hear people talking about it right now. The money flows everywhere. Money has the free flowing, and venture capital is everywhere. If you have truly a good idea, the market will find it. The reality is that's not the case. The reason for that is you can see when I dealt with the many investors, we found that most of investors, they have less than perfect knowledge. They do not understand the technology and the market segments and the true value of the technology. Probably not even a fraction of what the entrepreneurs understand, especially about some disruptive technologies, innovative new thoughts. So this asymmetric information leads to the suboptimal investment. I mean, for the small firms, for the individuals, these professors, especially when you come up with the cutting edge technology, it's going to be very difficult to obtain the funding. And that the investors are prone to, we call it the herd investing, the herding tendency. That means they chase for the hot spot. When something's hot and everybody's chasing that, they probably can realize the chance for the increase of valuation is higher than a cold spot, although those are the good technology, good ideas, and the cutting edge technologies. So that's the reality. And also many investors, they focus on the later stage of development. They want to see more certainty. And those people, because they have a target of a percentage of return on the capitals, quite often they seek for early exit. So they want to quick in, quick out, and they wish cash out as soon as possible when you be able to cash out. So that means the myth of the perfect market is for the entrepreneurs, so early on entrepreneurs with the cutting edge technologies. They quite often they have difficulty to get the fundings to bring this technology to market. And the third one is called a technology myth. So a lot of people kind of saying, if you have a sound technology, good technology, the ultimate success will always belong to you. That's not true. The reality is, if you look at the development of new chemical drugs, from about 10,000 compounds, you do research, you do synthesis, you do purification, you characterization, and testing, screening, do a lot of basic research, 10,000 compounds. Eventually, only one of them will become the drug, the final product, API for the final product. So go through the whole lot of screenings. When you get to the preclinical stage, animal study is about from 10,000 reduced to 10. The clinical trials, with the clinical trial phase 1, 2, and 3, will reduce to about 2, and to post-market surveillance to get to the market is about 1. So that's the reality. And we can see another reality here is when I talk to some of our professors, and we all get quite nervous about the complexity of putting a drug to the market. This is what we need to do for commercialization and the drug. In the past, we're saying it's 15, 17 years from really a true concept to a drug on the market. And nowadays, with the new technology, artificial intelligence, and deep collaboration, I see this time frame kind of reduced to about 10 years, maybe a little less. But by no means, we can see in order to get a drug to the market, we have to complete every aspect, every boxes in this development path, this development value chain. This is another picture of moving from research to clinical applications in healthcare. So you see, we start with the idea, get a patent applications, as come from university. Then you got into the toxicology testing and the pharmacologic testing and the clinical trials, preclinical trials, registration, et cetera, et cetera. So to the end, average research and development cost for a drug is about $1.4 billion. As we say, is probably one, if you start from beginning, I call it, 3 ones. So you need about $1 billion US for a drug, and you need about 10 years, and you need the success probably is less than 5%, 1% or so. So that's the challenges for all of us. Medical device side is a little bit different. So you start from user requirements to product ideas, and then you start to either use the existing technology or new technologies, or you can develop new technology, you can buy new technology, then get to the prototype. And the same as the drugs, you do preclinical assessment, clinical evaluation, regulatory approval. But also for medical devices, the challenge is, so if even you can make one prototype, you may not be able to make thousands, tens of thousands of millions effectively or cost effectively. So that's a challenge is really for from 1 to millions. That's the probably bigger challenge than you develop a new pharmaceutical drugs. The average research and development cost for medical devices, if it's 510K, which is you have a similar product on the market, average cost is about probably a couple $100 million US dollars. But if completely new innovative ideas, you go for PMA process, it's about 5 to 8 years. It's about close to $500 million. So that's for medical devices. So as I said, why is it so difficult? So we talk is because there's we call it value of death between the scientific discovery, scientific research results to innovative products and services. So this value of death is considered of a series of gaps from funding, talent, key technologies, market opportunities, sales channel regulations. This name of value of death, innovation value of death, comes from in 1800s when people moving from east to San Francisco to west to look for gold. So I have to pass Arizona. There's a valley which is very hot, and a lot of times the human being and animals, when they get in, sometimes they cannot get out. But when you get out, you can get to San Francisco and you can find the gold. So that's the reason we call it the value of death. And the reality for the cash flow is looking like this. We usually can find monies when we doing research, find money from federal agents, from universities, for basic research. And when you get to the point you have a prototype, you have seen successful phase 1 trials, etc., you can probably get money from VCs. So the challenge is to get money during the valley of death. When you have an idea, you want to move that idea into the commercialization. You don't have the prototypes yet. You have not even had enough data to prove your drug is safe and effective. So that's the challenging part. Okay. So then in terms of early funding, from the entrepreneurial perspectives, when you believe you have a good idea, what you really need to think is that those three critical elements: real, win, and worth. So real is this opportunity for your products, value created drugs or medical devices. Is the opportunity real? And can you win? It's a worth of doing. So this comes for a good understanding of authentic market needs. So is the market needs authentic? It's just like your fantasy. And do you have a profitable market segment? So when you make a product, can you find a segment that the value your patients think and is willing to pay you is higher than the cost you will need to create the product? Do you have a technological advantage compared to the existing technologies, the products? Do you have a strong team to work together to pull this out? And do you have a sound business plan? A lot of times, people are looking for money for funding without a business plan, without a good business plan. So you just talk about thoughts and ideas. It's the key, critical to have a sound business plan before you start talking to any funding resources. And the last one is, do you have a practical milestone plan? A lot of times we found the entrepreneurs, they're talking about a good big dream, which are all nice. When we talk about what you need to achieve in the next month, the next half year, next year, this is called practical milestones. Sometimes we don't have a good idea. We don't even know whether we have enough resources go through the next half a year to achieve what we like to achieve in the next milestone. So those are the three critical elements: real, win, and worth. And the second one is in terms of investment. So we should all understand the investors are looking for three things. One is a project has high growth, a product's high growth, or your company has high growth. Second one is your project is under evaluation, cheap. And third one is really the project has very high certainty. I have not seen a project have all these three combined. Most of the times you have two out of the three elements. Either you are in a very hot area, your project has very high growth, and because you're so early, it's still very cheap, your project, but then you are going to face quite high certainty, vice versa. So you got to understand where you are, where your project is doing this for these three critical elements. So that will help you to convince the future investors. Traditional angel investors will talk about 3 F's. So how you get money. Traditionally, in the past, when you need to get early angel fund, you look for your family members, your friends, and some people say fools. So those are 3 F's for traditional angel investors. So in China, we're trying to find ways to support entrepreneurs and innovators to cross the valley of death financially. So we have many new financial channels, including have a government talent fund, a scientific and innovation fund, various of scientific innovation fund from the government level, from the provincial level, and from the district level as well. You have a special fund for biopharmaceuticals, from medical devices, and from many different subject areas. There's multiple venture capital. Some are focused on early stage, some are focused on later stage, And also we do a lot of company merger and acquisitions. So you get together, working together to get support from each other. So that's the how to get early funding, and how in China we can support and help the entrepreneurs to find the financial sources. I call this a salesmanship. So if you really want to get your project funded, you need to have a sense of salesmanship. You will be essentially sell yourself, sell your project, sell your team, sell your ideas, etc. The second key in how to cross the innovation value of death is technologies. So quite often we find, during the development, we found have technology bottlenecks, and especially for researchers, usually do not know much about the manufacturing technologies. So those are the bottlenecks for university professors, and some know-hows, some emerging technologies, disruptive technologies as well. So the suggestion, and which we do a lot in our business district here, is to collaboration from university and industry. And we get the research and the technologies from the universities, research institutes, and some companies doing independent research and development. And also some areas are developing, we call it technology, join the technology pools. So they have a alliance among multiple companies, and those companies, they share the technologies, and by doing that way, they can usually create a win-win solution. The third aspect is talent. To cross the innovation value of death, we need talent. So in China, as we mentioned, the total number of R&D personnel reached 3.9 million years. So it's quite high, ranked number first in the world. The number of science and engineering graduates is the highest in the world. Okay, but a gap we have seen, quite clear gap, is I call it entrepreneurial leadership. So that means most of students, when they graduate from universities, usually they lack of practical knowledge in innovation and in new product development. We call it lack of knowledge in real world. And some of our students, the lack of ability to think deeply, and the lack of the desire for success, just like a true entrepreneur. And some of the students, a lack of spirit of taking adventures, and they know probably less about a collaboration and how to get the project and work the execution side. So those are the two gaps. So what to do is, when I was a young professor at the University of Texas, we start to work with the UT to develop some innovative courses and teach graduate students and undergraduate students about innovation and new product development. And also we teach students about how they work in industry. We quite do very well to educate students to prepare their career path in universities. We call it in academia. We do less, even in the United States at the UT, we do less to prepare the students for industrial work. So back to six, 7 years ago, I was asked by the University of Texas to develop a course. So we have developed a course, and it was very well received. And most of the lectures there is about how do you get a funding for your new ideas, how do you do market research, and how to create innovative ideas, how to turn ideas into prototypes, how to test and prototypes, how to get seek for regulatory approval, how to do project management, etc. So this course was very well received, and some of my students from UT, later on, they report to me that from that course, And later on, from the work among the teams during the class, they come up with some good ideas. So some of them even open small companies, chasing those innovative ideas. But last year, I have brought this idea to CCMU and just started teaching that course at CCMU in Chinese. So that's what I think we could do more. University develop the courses that teach our students about real world. Second is this is what the UC Berkeley has done very well. Established innovation entrepreneurship mentor group. So they have recruited Berkeley alumni to form what they call a mentorship group. Those are volunteers, and they work with either the university students, graduate students, or some we call it innovation groups, innovation park at Berkeley, to teach them the real world applications for innovation, and they interact with them. And by doing that, those the mentees, they learn a lot about how the industry innovation is doing. And the mentor group also learn a lot about new ideas, and sometimes we found a lot of new talents from the university. So this is what another thing we can do to get the talents. To cross the innovation valley of death, there's, as mentioned, need for the tremendous collaboration among universities and industries. So in the US, I have also seen in China, there's a changing roles of universities from the paper publication to value creation. What I see that is, so there's a lot of universities are not only looking for just having scientific discovery to publish the excellent paper and to solve the scientific issues, problems, but also they're looking for how to move those ideas into value creation. So in not only in the US, but also I can see the trend in China as well. Like if you look at the Silicon Valley, Stanford University and Berkeley, they have a lot of innovation parks. And in the park, they have the right policy to encourage professors and students to take their ideas and get some funding to move that into next step of the innovation to have the prototypes and have development. The changing role for universities also, I have seen the professors quite often are encouraged to start businesses by working with the industry. And those are quite often motivated by innovation award, not necessarily the paper publication, but by various of innovation award and also by the wealth. And we get a product and share the worth of the product, also share the growth of the company. The university work with the industry can develop the complementary goals, although they have different objectives, university and the industry, but they quite often they come up with the complementary goals, mutual respect, and the win-win model. I have seen many good relationship between university and industry companies. Those two different concepts, I say, they can interact, they can merge. If we really focus on that, we can get very good collaborations among university and the industry. The crossing the innovation valley of death, the market is quite important. So when you talk about market, first of all, is the value chain analysis. Where is the value of your innovation? What this innovation can do for patients, doctors, nurses. And then second question, how do we create a value? What is the technology for us to bring this value to the market, to our customers? What's missing in the current value chain? So those are all the questions when you start to think about moving a research idea into development, into innovation. The third one is when we see the good value and we have a strong, good technology, how do we deliver the value and where is the market? How can patients get from the value? And not only the patients, but also the doctors, the nurses, and the business government, they will probably share the worth from your new ideas. So how do you deliver value is another question. So to understand your new idea, new concepts. The last one is how do we execute, how do you capture the value? So this comes to business management. So how the resources allocated? Do you have enough resource for innovation? And is that sustainable for your new value chain? And how do you influence competitors' value chain? So those are the key questions when you move idea into a development stage and move into innovation. Then this map is quite interesting, and I think it's quite important for all of us when we start to do in the product development to start to have innovation. A lot of times we found that people tend to see, if I have idea, I want to carry it all the way through to the end to have a product and have product in the marketplace. But there are multiple ways to harvest the value of your ideas. So you could have internal development, and you could have external development as well. You could outsource your product development. You keep the key strength, or you can do. For example, if you're very good at the clinical, you are a doctor, you got a great idea, so you can outsource your product development and you control the clinical research and your final the sales in the market as well. You could also have strategic alliance with companies with good experience, and you can have joint venture. So I'm not going to spend too much of details into this map. All what I'm saying is from the risk and the return perspective, from resource allocation perspective, you can have multiple ways to take your products into the market. Okay, and sometimes it's quite essential for you to select it right away, because you and your team have certain strengths and also you have certain weaknesses. So if you can rightfully use the right business model to decide to move your product, your ideas into commercialization, you can significantly increase the rate of success. So now, last we'll talk about it, the crossing innovation value of that policy framework. From the government perspectives, this is what we do a lot in China. We actively build a government, a university, business, individual partnership. And in some, some provinces, some districts, they have a different model, but it's all around. So from central government, from the provincial government, from university and industry companies, and also individual entrepreneurs, how to work together. So they have many different types of economic development zones. They have different high-tech zones. Right now, China has promoted many free trade zones as well. And they have technology, science and technology parks. So each of the zones and parks, they have quite different policy. If you have good knowledge about how to harvest, how to seek support from the zones and the parks. Usually you can, quite often, I would say quite often, you can find the resources from the either government or from business, from university, those development zones or high-tech zones. And in China, there are also a lot of incubators and accelerators. The goal is to help you to screen your new ideas and to move that quickly, accelerate that through the development value chain, move into commercialization. There's a lot of, and very much encouraged by government to build industry alliance as well. So those are the ways, the policy, many different policies we developed, created to support the individuals, entrepreneurs, and the industries, universities to cross the innovation valley of death. And last piece is, so if you look from all these aspects, we start to form and we call it innovation ecosystem. So to understand the innovation ecosystem, so we understand the national innovation systems are different in scale and the flexibility. Okay, if you look at what's going on in China in terms of innovation ecosystem versus what's in Europe and in UK and Italy, in Germany, or versus in the US and the Silicon Valley, they are quite different. So the flexibility is actually a differentiator. Quite often we found it's very important on how well, where we spend the money. It's less on how much you spend. And all the systems, they have common challenges. So a lot of times you need to justify R&D expenditures by how they create the new jobs and new wealth. And then you need to reform the institutions, and you need to recognize the project failure that does not equal to program failure. So if you have a policy and a couple projects and who enjoy the policy failed, it does not mean that policy is a failure. So you got to look into the whole portfolio, look from perspective of the whole innovation ecosystem. So this is my last slide. So to summarize how to cross innovation, the valley of death, I call it SMILE. First is a share. So we need to share. A lot of times when we talk about a product development innovation, we think intellectual property. That's very important. Okay. But also you need to think, if you keep everything to yourself, nowadays, especially for very sophisticated medical devices and for biopharmaceuticals, even for chemical drugs, it's not going to be possible for one person or one small team to complete everything. So you start to think about share the development work with the other teams, other firms, and at the same time, you need to think about how to share the value. And you work together with other firms, teams to jointly grow the cake. Then you can share a larger piece of the cake. So that's one called share. Second is the M, milestone. So every project, when you think about the moving into research, into innovation, you got to think about the overall plan, strategic plan, and also the milestone plan. So one step by step, achieve a milestone, move to another milestone. And just trying to avoid, you have a big dream, but you don't have a practical project plan, you don't have a project milestone plan. Third one is I, is intellectual property. In order to win in the marketplace, the true innovation always have some uniqueness in terms of your innovative ideas, in terms of your intellectual properties. No matter the intellectual property resides on the technology side, or market side, or clinical side, or the regulatory side, no matter where it resides, but you do need some uniqueness in your strength. The fourth one is a leverage. So you and your team always have strength and also weaknesses. How to leverage the strength of others, other teams, and to fill the gap for your team. So in some of the incubators and development zones in China, they have a publicly owned, we call it a development value chain. So they have for example, a pharmaceutical drug development. They have all the equipment ready for rent. So if you look at what your team can do in China, in most of some of the industry park in China, and you can do certain things very well, or for some other things you cannot do, you can leverage the resources, expertise in those development zone, development park to achieve your goal. The last one is experience. So quite often we talk about a new product development, especially for medical device for pharmaceuticals in healthcare. The success rate is quite low. We're talking about a few percent, or maybe 10%, 20%. So in order to avoid some traps, the best way is to find people with industry experience. They have been there, they have done that. So when you have people around you with those experience, you can significantly increase your success rate. So to summarize, to cross the innovation value of death, we need to smile. Thanks, that's all my lecture for today.